And oh, great. Thank you very much for the kind invitation. My name is Evelyn Cusack, and I'm probably one of the oldest forecasters in Europe because I started in Met Éireann in 1981. So I celebrated 40 years this year. So I've managed to become head of forecasting in the last 5 years. So it's a great privilege to lead the forecasting group here in Ireland. I really spent most of my career in forecasting. So I'm a member of the working group for cooperation between European forecasters. That's WGCEF here. And this is the new EUMETNET group in the forecasting section. So a couple of years ago, well, really 10 years ago, with the start of social media, a lot of groups began naming storms. And in fact, it became very popular in the media. Oh, Storm Claudia is coming to town, and sort of the National Met Service would say, well, who named that storm? Who's Storm Claudia? So the National Met Services decided then this seems to be getting a lot of publicity and a lot of engagement with the public, and we decided that the National Met Services would take on storm naming ourselves. And the reason why, I asked you, why did we do this? Well, it's really for the reach, engagement and influence for our weather warnings. So, it's really all about the warnings. So when we issue a weather warning, winds will reach 120 kilometers per hour, it's ignored. But if I say Storm Claudia is coming tomorrow and winds will reach 120 kilometers per hour, then all hell breaks loose in the media. So down here is actually our webpage, met.ie, that's the Met Éireann's website, and the page views during the 2019 and 2020 storm season. And the first one, Storm Lorenzo, actually, that was sort of the media went crazy because a week ahead, or 10 days ahead with the ECMWF chart, it indicated there was a possibility of a tropical storm, Lorenzo, which was a hurricane, would head towards Ireland. But so in fact, we were a victim of our own success in the sense that even closer to the time, there's a high degree of uncertainty with this. And in fact, Met Éireann just issued some yellow wind warnings and a few orange warnings for the western coastal counties. But then the day after, said, where was Storm Lorenzo? So because the media and, there were lots of press conferences and everything about it. So in a sense, storm naming has become too successful. So really, let's look at it now in a little more detail. By the National Met Service, by EUMETNET National Meteorological Services naming them, a storm name then and the warnings has that authoritative voice of a Met Service. Now it's important that a storm has just a single name, and I'll explain that in a minute, but it's hugely effective at communicating our warnings. And this graphic here just is an example of that. That when we name a storm, the hits on our website and for our warnings, it's just huge. It just goes out of this world. It's also had a very good knock-on effect. It's fostered collaboration between adjoining National Met Services, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And it's very useful for a post-event for references. And we can remember Storm Ophelia, Storm Lorenzo, Storm Dennis, but you mightn't actually remember the name. So it's been proved very, very useful. Now, so how do we name storms in Europe? You might be a bit puzzled by this picture here. It's actually snow in the Netherlands, and actually that storm system was named by our colleagues in KNMI Storm Darcy for the snow event. And this is equally the recent catastrophic flooding in Sicily from Storm Apollo. So how do we name storms? Well, we name storms when it's associated with a large depression, not necessarily always storm winds, and particularly now in the Mediterranean, a depression can often give a flooding event rather than a wind event. But it's based on warnings in the meteor alarm framework. So either orange or red warnings are warranted. So it's impact-based and our thresholds, and it can be for wind, rain, or snow. Now, NMS, that's the National Met Services, which first issues the warning, or the National Met Service who expects high impacts names the storm or the low pressure system in consultation with other partners. So in Ireland, we get a lot of storms out in the Atlantic, and well, not in Ireland, there's a lot of storms out in the Atlantic that whiz in there up towards Iceland and between Iceland and Norway. So we don't name all those storms in the Atlantic. We only, and same for Portugal, we only name a storm that will actually affect Ireland, and then equally Portugal will name a storm if it affects the Azores, and Spain, the Canaries, that can name a storm as well. So we only name a storm when we expect high impacts, when it's over land. Actually, I don't have over land written there, but it has to be over land, not at sea. Now, this is the big thing. If one National Met Service names a storm, what we really want is that it keeps its name then. So if Portugal names the storm and it heads up towards Ireland, Ireland will use that name. And the same if Portugal names the storm and that travels up to Norway, then Norway is going to use that same name. And equally, if it moves in across the continent, and if there's a name down here in the Mediterranean, now it's very unlikely that will come back north, but it can have a really spin around effect through Central Europe. So this is the sort of main thing that we are really emphasizing, that if one National Met Service names a storm, then that's its name. It's like when we're baptized or our parents give us our name, that's your name. Maybe it's a bad example because sometimes people get nicknames, but anyway. Now, where do we get the names from? Well, the names are picked by the National Met Services, and a combination of public suggestions and maybe the communications officer in the National Met Service. But we do have some fun, say in the summer, we put the call out for Twitter, and we get a lot of letters and emails in from people, and I personally get a lot of cards from children who just would love to have a storm named after them. I think I have some there. I'll have a look for them to show you. Now, so I'm going to go into a bit of meteorology now. We've loads of time. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we actually forecast storms. Now, you all probably know this, but it's a good little resume to give anyway to refresh our minds as part of this presentation. So in all forecasting, we start with observations. So this is an old graphic I just got from the WMO. It's a little bit fuzzy, sorry about that. But the WMO say that we have over 10,000 surface weather stations, maybe there's more now, 1,000 upper air stations, 7,000 ships, and then we've moored and drifting buoys and hundreds of weather radar, and then obviously all the fantastic research satellites and EUMETSAT contributing hugely to that for Europe, of course, and also NOAA. And we have Copernicus, which is an amazing addition to our stable. Now, I suppose in the pre-scientific era, all people could do is really look out the window or look at the cave and look at the clouds passing by. Then they began to use maybe signs from nature, red sky at night, shepherd's delight. you know, in an attempt to try and forecast the weather and put some patterns on it. But of course, we use mathematical models or physical model of the atmosphere. So you're all familiar with this graphic. So the sun doesn't really heat the atmosphere; it heats the ground, and then the ground heats the atmosphere. And this is where the greenhouse effect comes in. Oh yeah, that's gone. This is where the greenhouse effect comes in, because all the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere can send that heat back down. So that's a quick greenhouse gas effect there. So, so we basically form a mathematical model, a physical model of the weather processes in the atmosphere. And we've all learned our primitive equations here. It's interesting to see that Boyle's law, Robert Boyle was an Irish physicist going back to the 1600s. And actually, I'll just go back to the very beginning because I want to show you. This is our group, the WGCEF, the Working Group for Cooperation Between European Forecasters. Our last physical meeting was actually in Dublin in 2019, and we visited. I brought the gang to the Marsh's Library. So if you want to take a note of that, it's a really interesting library. It's very old. It's one of the oldest libraries in Europe, 1703, I think it was founded. And we actually were really thrilled to see original manuscripts by Robert Boyle and some very old manuscripts there. So that was our little nerdy tour on the Saturday after the meeting. So I'll just go back to our primitive equations here. So there's Boyle's law. So as I said, his work is still available in the great libraries around the world, and particularly in Dublin in Marsh's Library. So these are the general equations of the atmosphere. So we construct, if you like, this mathematical or physical model of the atmosphere, and then we feed it into this supercomputer. So this is the ECMWF Cray XC40 supercomputer, and the website tells me that it can perform 2 quadrillion calculations a second. So I'm not sure how many zeros are on quadrillion. So if somebody could put that into the chat, that'd be great. And then we come up with, hey, magic, weather forecast charts for 10 days ahead. Now, I'm not going to go into probabilistic too much. You're all aware of that. But this is the one I just grabbed from this morning. So this is the forecast for Friday, the 12th of November at 06. So this is what we call the deterministic model. And as you may know, ECMWF run a 51 member ensemble. So this is just the deterministic. So I just want to see, there's little Ireland here. Actually, that rain in the Mediterranean is from the low pressure system BLAS. So remind me, remind me to talk about that later. So for Friday, that's tomorrow at 6. Sorry, I'm going to call. Thanks. Sorry, pardon me. So tomorrow is Friday. So that looks a fairly deep depression, but there's a really horrible looking storm. It's probably one of extratropical out in the Atlantic. So drilling down a little bit, we have our high resolution model here. And this is for Friday tonight. And we have it colored in. So there's the low pressure. So it's just really giving yellow level warnings, just really touching the west coast. But again, this is the deterministic model. And like all national Met services in Europe, we're all now running our own high resolution model. So this is the view from Met Éireann run an 11 member, why have I got 15 members there? Ensemble. So this is for Friday at 4. So the orange there are orange level winds, but we're not too worried, because the worst the worst case scenario there is just getting in a little bit there into Galway Bay. So we certainly obviously look at the deterministic, but really it's all about ensemble forecasting now. And the difference is, this is the ECMWF global model. So again, sorry, I've just used Irish examples, but you have your own examples from your own countries. So this is how Ireland is modelled in the global model with 9 kilometres resolution. So our Harmony, 2.5 kilometres resolution. This is actually our mountain, so it's much closer to reality. And then the next iteration is that we're going obviously sub-kilometre. So all countries have their own high resolution models, which augments the fantastic, amazing ECMWF global model. So this is what I remember I mentioned Storm Lorenzo, that you know, this is freely available to the public. So there's a lot of interested, if you want to say, armchair meteorologists or amateur, you know, really interested, and they run their own websites. So they can put the word out 10 days ahead and 8 days ahead, and that really captures the public imagination. So each National Met Service augment their own ECMWF global model by their own high resolution ensemble modeling. Now, so I'm just going to recap them. So the forecaster, excuse me. So the forecaster coming in on duty looks at all the observations. Where are we? Oh God, yeah. They look through all the observations, the radar, the satellite, and then look through all the modeling. It can take quite a few hours. And then if there is a chance of a storm, I've shown you this example here. This is very interesting. So this was the 18th of August in 2020, all right? So this is a very interesting example. So here's Ireland here. So the orange are where the model is forecasting orange level winds. So remember our storm naming rule. We won't name a storm unless we expect fairly, you know, reasonable regional impacts or orange level winds across a large area and not just on the coast. So I just want you to show that really the orange and the red, so watch out for this. So this is the different views through the ensembles. So this one shows red there getting in across a lot of County Galway. There's a large city there in Galway, so while it doesn't seem of huge extent spatially, it would cover, you know, a big population centre there, and there's a lot of fishing and marine work going on in that area. So if you look through all the different ensembles, this one shows more widespread orange into the west and into a good part here of the southwest of Ireland. This ensemble, remember, shows hardly anything, but shows orange level winds in the southeast. And this one shows extensive orange level winds in the southeast, perhaps getting into Dublin. And then this one keeps the main storm out to the west. And this one shows it widespread in, and this would include Galway City and Cork City. And this one is fairly similar as well. So the forecaster is faced with this, and it's the same for every country using their ensemble high resolution models. So it's not just a simple matter of just looking, you know, at one forecast. When I started off all those years ago, modelling was just starting, so certainly we would have been thrilled just to have a deterministic model. But this is where collaboration between other national and Met services is really taking off now due to the storm naming initiative. So I'll give an example. Ireland is in collaboration in the storm naming procedure with our colleagues in the UK Met Office and our colleagues in KNMI, the Netherlands. And I'll show you some other storm naming groups. So if I'm the forecaster sitting there and looking at these ensembles, So I'll actually physically ring. We find the telephone the best way of communicating. The chief forecaster in the UK in the Met Office and also in KNMI, and we'll have a discussion, and they'll share their high resolution models, and we'll have a discussion. But in this case, it's really up to Ireland to name it because it's going to have impact on us first. So we did actually name that. So I hope that's given you a bit of a flavour. But as storm naming has become more popular over the last 5 years, some chaos has ensued as different national Met services have been giving names. So it's often ended up that there's one storm could have, in fact, 3 names. So a couple of years ago, this storm here, this is the straw that broke the camel's back, because it had 3 names: Kira, Sabine, and Elsa. So Kira was named by Ireland and the UK. Sabine was named, it's the same storm, by Free Universität of Berlin and the German areas there, and northern Italy, Switzerland, Austria. They used Sabine. And then Elsa was named, the same storm went up to Norway. That was named Elsa. So it's a bit chaotic there. So this is the raison d'etre for the EUMETNET Storm Naming Initiative and Storm Naming Task Team. So I'm going to give you, there's been a lot of developments in the last 2 years, so I'm going to give you the current state of play now as of today. And we're actually having a major storm naming session tomorrow with every single EUMETNET country, EUMETNET group. So in fact, if this talk was next week, it might have been slightly better, but I'm going to give you now the current state of play. So there's an informal grouping in the north, which is Norway, Sweden, and Denmark. And it's not that they use the same names, but the chief forecaster in Norway, if they're expecting a storm, they actually reach into their drawer, the drawer beside their screens, and take out a secret list. So it's very exciting. So the public don't know about it until the chief forecaster in Norway says, it shall be called Elsa. And in fact, Sweden named the storm depending on the saint's day it's going to fall, and that's the same actually for Finland as well. So the next storm naming group, the 2 groups, the West and Southwest. The West came into operation in 2015 and the Southwest in 2016. So the West group now has Ireland, UK, and the Netherlands. Now I'll explain what these groups do in a few minutes. We still have loads of time. The Southwest group is France, Spain, Portugal, Belgium, and Luxembourg. Sorry, I didn't mark in Luxembourg there. It has in the next graphic. And then we're really excited and thrilled that just in September and October, 2 new storm naming groups have become operational. And that's the Central Mediterranean, which consists of Italy, Slovenia, Croatia, North Macedonia, Montenegro, and Malta. And then, if you like, we're calling that the Central Mediterranean group. And then the Southeast group, or the East Mediterranean group, is trilateral between Greece, Cyprus, and Israel. And I must say they've had a really, really busy time. So Greece named its first, and then we have, beg your pardon, we have the Central group, which is Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Poland, the Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Hungary. Now, I'm not ignoring these areas here. We have designed groups here. In general, a lot of storms don't originate here. They kind of move, if you like, move from the Atlantic across like that, or then maybe swirl around from the north. But we do have groups here, but we'll finalize that actually tomorrow. So I'm not leaving any EUMETNET country out. But as I said, it's been very exciting down here now. but I'm sure traumatic for the forecasters and for the citizens, very traumatic, because there has been some devastating weather, some very, very poor weather. And remember, this storm naming initiative, and we name a storm to warn the citizen and the civil authorities and the emergency services of some very poor weather on the way. So by naming a storm, we get the message out that there's some very severe weather on the way. In fact, our colleagues in Greece, HNMS, have named 2 storms so far, Athena and Bolos, and the Central Mediterranean named Apollo. And there's some really, really bad weather, several hundreds of millimeters of rain and some terrible deaths, etc. So they have felt two reports that it did increase engagement and the influence for the warnings, and also help the emergency services prepare for it. And also, from a professional point of view, it has fostered collaboration between the chief forecasters. Being a forecaster can be a very lonely occupation, and there's a huge responsibility, but I mean, that's what we're paid for. That's our job. But it really does help that you can talk to your colleagues who too are going to be affected by the same weather system. I mean, obviously it's easier for the likes of Ireland and England. We share the same language, and the Netherlands as well. Our common language here is English, you know, but it is more difficult when you have a variety of languages. So, you know, I appreciate that, but still, you know, the forecasters can talk either by email, or we're using WebEx now, which has, you know, improved communications. And that's, I suppose, one positive of COVID, that we all are, you know, had to learn how to work from home, and that, you know, great that we can now have this conference here and it's been recorded and we can all watch it again. So when the forecaster, the chief forecaster, in collaboration with their colleagues in the other groups, and having looked at all the evidence, all the observations, all the modelling, all the ensembles, the shifted tails, the EFIs from the ECMWF, fills in this coordination form. In fact, our colleagues in Portugal made it for us. So now it seems rather complicated, but it's not at all. So we have a different form for each group, if you like. So we put in the name of the storm, the name of your group, first wind warning, the date and the time of the first wind warning, when you issue it, and then you say the maximum level if it's going to be orange, or indeed if it's going to be red. Can I change the color? Or am I tempting fate here? So if you want, maybe that would be an orange wind, and then if you wanted in the coast, it would be red, and maybe it could be a red rain. So do you remember I said in the Mediterranean, you don't get maybe as much storms, but you do get high impact weather. So you might actually get for strong winds, heavy precipitation. So maximum wind level could be yellow, but the heavy precipitation could be red. Or indeed, you know, with low temperatures, and I see they have dust warning. So that's something that doesn't affect Ireland, dust, but obviously it does here from being blown over from the Middle East. So really, it doesn't necessarily have to be just a storm, but we're talking about a severe weather event, that the communication of which, by using a name, can help with the warnings and help alert the public. So that's why KNMI named Jarcy. It wasn't a storm in the conventional sense of strong winds, but it gave blizzard-like conditions and meters and meters and meters of snow, and unfortunately fatalities. So very kindly, and we're delighted that EUMETNET have created a central portal address, if you like. It's stormnaming@eumetnet.eu. And our other Claudia Keller, set, oh, what's that? Sorry. Storm naming. So when we issue a name storm here, we then send this into this central email address, and then EUMETNET then send that out to all other Met services. So it's all now about communication. So I want to know when Portugal names a storm. Well, they can send it to me directly, which we have been doing. But now with all the extra groups, sorry. With all the extra groups in, where are we? Yeah. With all the extra groups in, you know, if Alessio in Italy names a storm, that could have a knock-on effect. It certainly could have a knock-on effect over Central Europe. So it's huge now about improving our communications, really. Erase ink. Okay. So we're trying out this. This is our first season. So on my email, I'll get in. So this was the email from EUMETNET. It actually came. It comes in. It appears to come in from the country who issued it, but it's actually from this EUMETNET central portal. And then this is my own local storm naming communication. So that's just an example of how we do that. So what we want then is to display the names on each country's analysis. So I've just taken a sample the other day, the 8th of November. I didn't have time to do it this morning. So this was the system BLAS, B-L-A-S, which is the second name on the Italian, where is it? Central Mediterranean. Yeah, so it's the second name. The second name on the Southwest group. And it really doesn't look very much, does it? Look, it's just a slack area of low pressure. So you might say, how could that be named a storm? You know, so it's a storm system, but it's really a low pressure system. But in fact, yesterday this gave a huge amount of rain. Sorry, I actually forget, several hundreds of millimeters, maybe 300 plus something in Sardinia, and caused awful weather there. So the forecasters in Spain were 100% correct to name it, because they were expecting severe weather, and that weather was in the form of severe rainfall. But just to show you now a quick tour around some of the Met services in Europe. And this is the UK Met Office, their analysis. Now, X-Wanda, that came from the Tropical Storm Wanda, and then got caught up in our jet stream, so we do label that. Now, the UK Met Office didn't write in BLAS there. Met Éireann, that's our analysis. In fact, we have a mistake there. We should have that as X-Wanda. And then there we have BLAS. And then EUMET, the Spanish Met Service, who actually named it, so obviously they would have it on. And here's Météo France, I've named it here, and also the Italian Met Service. Now, sorry, excuse me. I just have... Excuse me, a colleague left their phone in my office and it just started ringing there. So I just think that this graphic is very interesting. It shows all our different analysis that are available to the public. But a huge part of what's going to make this storm naming initiative very successful is our colleagues in Berlin, the Free Universität in Berlin. Do you see her? So they very kindly were thrilled that they have agreed to use the EUMETNET storm names on their analysis. So you can see it here. They call it INT, that's international and BLAS. So you may or may not know that the Free Universität of Berlin have, since the 1940s, their own storm naming initiative. If you like, they started it in Europe, and the public can send in names. They can actually buy a name, and this money is used to fund the meteorological department in the Free University of Berlin. So somebody called Stephanie paid, I think, €199 to get their name on the map. It costs you more to get a high pressure name because high pressures hang around much longer, whereas Stephanie might just go shoot up across the Atlantic, whereas Sylvie there would hang around, could be around for 2 weeks. But we are really delighted and very grateful to FU Berlin that they are using our international names. And in fact, they have a huge reach across the central group, if you like. So FU Berlin name really every system. Well, not every system, most systems. But remember, the difference is that the EUMETNET National Meteorological Services only name a storm when it's going to give orange level winds. So that's why we couldn't adopt the names from Berlin, because, you know, they're all named anyway, but they mightn't give you any severe weather. So we're tying in naming a storm system with severe weather and severe weather warnings. So in fact, this is an example when they didn't actually have a name on this system. So it was named, as I said, by Spain, and by putting it on their map then, that name was adopted more generally. But you might think, well, it would be nice maybe to have one analysis with just one name, but each country has their own style. Each National Met Services has their own style, but we do need a way of getting it into the Meteor Alarm system. Now, the Meteor Alarm have done great work in the last 2 years, so I hope you're all enjoying the new look Meteor Alarm. They have just recently issued a thumbnail version, so you can put that up on your websites. But we are discussing now at our meeting tomorrow, how are we going to get the storm naming information into a Meteor Alarm layer, if you like. Sorry, I just took this image on my phone. You can't cut and take a snip of the drop-down menu because it disappears. So I just took this on my phone, so sorry, it's so fuzzy. So all the hazard types now at the moment, there's avalanches, coastal event, flooding, fog, forest fire, high temperature, low temperature, rain, flooding, snow or ice, thunderstorm, and wind. So we need to get a storm name layer into the Meteor Alarm, but using the CAP system. So that's going to be our next big thing. Like, we've made a lot of progress now, even this year. We more or less have a unified system of storm naming. I know it doesn't look like it, but remember the golden rule. It doesn't really matter what you call it, but as long as one National Met Service names it, the others will keep that name. So it doesn't matter if there's all different names and different countries putting, using different lists, not different names, different lists, as long as once it has a EUMETNET name, that we keep that name. That's the golden rule, if you like. But we do need to decide how we are going to get it into the Meteor Alarm, in as a Meteor Alarm layer. I mean, you might say, well, just show pressure chart and put the name on it. But that's going to be harder to agree on because we all have different views on how the pressure chart can be shown, and there are different analyses. Of course, I think, you know, obviously the ECMWF analysis is common to us all. So perhaps we can use that. But as I mentioned earlier, each country has their own high resolution model, and that will show it up maybe slightly differently. But I mean, the ECMWF model is the best model in the world anyway, so the analysis is excellent. So, you know, we may decide to put in a layer here of just the surface pressure. There's one slight problem with that, because when you could issue warnings, today's Thursday, we could issue warnings for Saturday or Sunday, and the low pressure mightn't actually be formed yet. You know, it might be, you might be predicting, or the model predicting, rapid cyclogenesis to take place in 2 days. So that low wouldn't really exist yet. But perhaps we could just show the analysis of the forecast analysis of when you expect the severe weather is going to hit. So we're going to make some decisions on that. Now, as I said, it may look very, you know, complicated and all that, and I know some people have asked, well, why don't all the national Met services, why isn't there a common EUMETNET name, just one set of names, I'm sure you're going to ask me, for all of Europe? Well, we all have different languages. So an Irish name like Siveen or Blonid might seem grand for Ireland, but you know, if you're in Norway or Sweden, you might think, what the hell, how do you pronounce that? We had an experience that Portugal named Storm Naming, excuse my Portuguese, and it was very hard for the Irish people to actually pronounce that. So because Europe has such a diverse range of languages and cultures, it would be hard to come up with a sort of rather bland set of names. So that said, now if you look in the Caribbean and the North Atlantic names, this is a spectacular view from space of an Atlantic hurricane using the NOAA satellite. You can see there is a common group of names for the North Atlantic tropical storms and hurricanes. So you might say, why doesn't Europe do that? Well, maybe we will, but I personally think there mightn't be enough letters in the alphabet. Now, actually, that's happening with the hurricanes as well. They had to start using Greek names, but that has been stopped now. But they have a supplemental list. And what you do there with the National Hurricane Centre is there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, a rotating list of 6 names. So we've finished 2021 now. So the names next year will be the 2016 names. Now, if there's any big destructive hurricane, then the National Hurricane Committee meet once a year and they retire that name. So I can't really, can we recognize anyone that's going to be retired? Well, obviously they have been retired, so, but I don't recognize any really bad one this year that might be retired, if anybody does. So maybe we'll move towards that in Europe, but I just think we have such a diversity of names and cultures. Oh yeah, there's one other really important reason why I don't think it would work for Europe. There is a National Hurricane Centre, so there's actually hurricane forecasters. So there's one group of forecasters, only about 12 of them actually, who actually pick the names. Whereas in Europe, that's not the case, because the storm that affects Scotland, I mean, people down in Sicily really don't care about that. But not that they don't care, but it's not going to affect you as such. You know, vice versa. You know what I'm trying to say. So it is different in the North Atlantic with the National Hurricane Centre. They name every tropical system that is actually over the sea. It doesn't have to hit land. Whereas remember again in Europe, We only name them when they're actually hitting land. So that's the big difference. So I think that's about it, Claudia. As I said, our meeting, we have a big storm naming meeting tomorrow, and we'll make some further decisions. So maybe I can update you on that next year. But certainly we'll have information on the EUMETNET website and for each individual country. But we are going to concentrate on the communications between the National Met Service who names the storm and the other National Met Services. And this has gone a long way now over the last month with improving communications by the central EUMETNET Storm Naming email. So we're going to discuss how we're going to display the storm names on Met Éireann, and then maybe using the actual storm names in our national warnings and our websites. So that's it, Claudia. I hope that was okay, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Yes, thank you, Evelyn, for your very insightful and entertaining presentation. It was perfect. So let's ask the community, do you have any questions?
You can post them in the chat or raise a hand, and I will unmute you.
Thank you, Tomislav.
I just put up the groups again. I put up the rules again. Do you want to share if anybody wants these, or do you want to put it up on your training website, the slides?
Yeah, I can do that. I have the original that you sent me.
Yeah, I've actually made a few changes, but you can put that up. I just added in the ensemble stuff.
Okay, sure.
I'll try and send it. It was too big. It was 20 megabytes.
We'll think of something, but yeah, I can put it along with the recording. There is a question in the chat. If you want.
I hope I can answer it. Do you want me to look at it?
Yeah, please.
I don't know how to do that.
In the chat.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh God, sorry.
The last two.
I was born that year. Is that when I joined Met Éireann? Oh my God.
No, the last two. From Abdel Fattah and.
Is there any cooperation between the southern and northern countries of Mediterranean to name the Mediterranean storms? Because sometimes these storms affect the southern part more than the northern part as ballast storms. That's one question.
Yeah, is there any cooperation between southern and northern countries of Mediterranean? Yeah. Sorry. Actually, it's good to keep these up. So, just this year, September, October, these are the two Mediterranean groups. Sorry, were you asking about other? Do you know if they're asking?
Do you want me to unmute you?
The questioner. Yeah, please, if you unmute the questioner. You see, the cooperation is here. I mean, these are just loose groups. These are the groups, but if something is named here, you can just, you just keep that name. Do you know what I mean? It's not that any one country owns the name. But what's good about the groups is, as I said, it fosters collaboration between the forecasters. But I mean, that doesn't mean that if you're in the French group that you can't ring the forecaster in the Italian group. I mean, it's never been done before. But we now, with this EUMETNET Storm Naming initiative, we have really come together more, and we will continue to do so over the next few years. We have shared for the first time I haven't shown it here, but the chief forecaster's direct telephone number and the email in the forecast office. So it's going to really improve cooperation across across the national boundaries, if you know what I mean. I don't know if that's answered. So the answer is yes, there is. Yes, from this season. That's my answer, I think. Is that okay? There's no other. Oh, there's another question. Hang on.
That is from Marco.
Are the forms shared via email or is there an online site to fill in? Yeah. So that's what I was saying, that we are sharing them by email. We're sending them into this EUMETNET Storm Naming group. Now, if you're saying, would you like to get the form, every single EUMETNET meteorological office will have signed up for this and will get each form. And you might think, you know, if you're in Poland, oh, do I really want the form from Ireland? Well, I think it's nice that we all mark them in on our analysis chart, because we're more aware then, and then if you see in the news of severe weather, I think it'll all make us more aware of, you know, the different weather possible. And what may affect Poland today will, you know, could well affect the eastern countries here, Bulgaria. You know, it sometimes moves down that way. You know yourself, while the prevailing wind is coming from the Atlantic, you know, in the Mediterranean, as I said, you get these huge rainfall events, devastating, catastrophic events from these systems. So the answer to that is yes, it's shared via email, and it's going directly into your National Met Service. If you want to get the form yourself, you contact the forecast office and you can just get added on to your local email address. I want each National Met Service to have a storm naming group. So while we send it into the stormnaming@eumetnet.eu, that email will distribute it back out, as I said here. But then when I receive it, I must have my own local storm naming group to send it. And I can send it to hundreds in my Met Service then. Is that okay? Let's see now. Hi, when can we expect to have an agreement? Oh, yeah, sorry. When can we expect to have an agreement in place? Who's that? Sorry, when can we expect to have an agreement in place? Is this for these areas here under? I believe it is a question about European and African coast. Oh, sorry. Oh, I understand. Okay. In the Mediterranean. Do the working group have in mind to categorize the Mediterranean? No. No, we're just naming them, but it's a severe weather system. That's what it's calling, rather than storm. Oh, from North Africa, no, we're not talking about that yet. Egypt, Tunisia, okay, Libya, Algeria, Morocco. Okay, well that's a very interesting point. So I'll bring that up tomorrow. At the moment, we're working on EUMETNET. Through EUMETNET. So obviously these countries aren't in the EUMETNET family at the moment, but obviously we are the meteorological community is a global community with free exchange of information. So that's a very interesting point, and I shall bring it up. Thank you very much. Yes, from this season. Have you, sorry, Delia? Have you completely dismissed the option, maybe in this way, once you could avoid problems like names had to be pronounced and the list would be more consistent? Yeah, Leaf from SMHI, Sweden. Have you completely dismissed the option? No, Leaf, I haven't. Let me go back here. No, I'm glad to mention it again. I think maybe in a few years, you know, I'll probably be retired. I just feel it's not so much the names. Okay, we can get around the names. We can call them Tom, Jack, Leaf, Claudia. We all have enough common names. You know, that's not a problem. And I mean, if you think here in Caribbean, Gulf of Mexico and America, like there's a huge diversity of names. So I guess the names aren't the big thing, and we could certainly have one list. At the moment, no, because we're just beginning this in a sense to, for each of the Met services to talk to each other. It is a new thing that one forecaster would ring another forecaster in a different country. That hasn't been done. Okay, the WGCEF, that group I'm in, a cooperation between European forecasters. This is a fantastic group, and in fact, because of COVID, our meeting this year is online, so we're actually recording it. So I think that in itself is going to foster cooperation between all the forecasters. So Leaf, maybe yes, down the line, nothing is dismissed. I'm just saying it would be more, it is more complicated than in the National Hurricane Centre, because that's just one group of forecasters. I think there's just 12 of them actually on a shift, and they make all the decisions, and they name every single system that's you know, in the ocean, not just over land. But you know, yeah, so it doesn't really matter. We could still have the cooperation and still have one set of names. Definitely the alphabet, it wouldn't be enough. So we'd probably need 2 sets for each year. So that's fine too. That's no problem. So yeah, and I'll pass on your comment. I'm not dismissing it at all. No. Have I any more chat?
Yes, there are 2 questions. And by the way, that was a question from Delia, not Leaf.
Oh, I'm reading it wrong. Sorry, Delia. Sorry. I have a sister-in-law called Delia, so that's a very good name. I must write that down. Would you like a storm, Delia?
Leaf has asked, when can we have an agreement in place?
When can we have an agreement in place? What agreement for what? Where's Lee from? Sweden?
Yes.
But there an agreement in place. There is an agreement in place with Sweden. That's the Northern Group. Okay, so people would like a common list for EU, EUMETNET, yeah, okay. Conor Lally, with the expansion of the naming groups and areas, should the naming season change as well? No, well actually, I'm not sure why July to July, but we did initially, Conor, have it sort of September to April, but we were very foolish because you can get severe weather at any time of the year. And in fact, last summer, not this summer, last summer, Ireland got 2 storms, now minor ones if you like, but we had to name 2, Ellen and Francis, in August. The expansion of the naming groups and areas should the namings, well, yes, sure, we can start July to July. It's no problem as long as we all agree. Hi, Delia. Do you think it would be a good idea to name heat waves in the future? Yeah, now Free University of Berlin do, and some newspapers do, and I think the one was called Lucifer. The thing about a heat wave is it's harder to forecast, but I suppose we can forecast a high. You know, but European highs can hang around for weeks and weeks, so yeah, look, I'll add that in. It certainly won't be soon, but I think National Met Services can name them, certainly. Lucifer was one that I do remember. Can you reuse storm names? Am I reading this? Is that from Wayne? Can you?
Yes.
Yeah, so the name's on top, sorry. Okay, thanks, Connor. So Wayne, can you reuse storm? Okay, Wayne, that's a really good question. We've actually decided not to reuse the EUMETNET names, and the reason being that all our storms hit land, right? Whereas in the National Hurricane ones, some of these are at sea and they never actually hit land, so they can reuse them. But they retire names that really have caused destruction over land. But, you know, basically, I think that's most of them that actually make landfall, because if a hurricane hits you, you're not really going to get away with very little. Obviously, some are worse than others, and some hit larger population centres. So we've decided, Wayne, that we don't actually reuse the EUMETNET names, because every name will have hit a country. So unless the forecast was completely wrong, that the name didn't cause any destruction. But that in its own way, people might say, oh, we had Storm Wayne before and it gave nothing. So this one could be another, just Wayne is too nice, it's not going to give us any rain. So the answer, I can answer that, Wayne, no. Ruben, once storms have been named, where can we see a kind of reference, or put another way around, where and when do we Swiss guys find out that our Portuguese colleagues have given a name for a storm to come? Okay. Okay, Marco. Now, so let's go back. Sorry, this is the big issue. Where am I gone? So, Marco, if you can tell me how to do it, we will. But we want to get the name in as a meteor alarm layer. But also in Switzerland, you're part of the central group. So Meteo Swiss will get the storm naming form through this storm naming at eumetnet.eu. So if you want to get on that list, just get yourself added on. But it would be much better to have it on as a meteor alarm name, and then we could all access it easy. Because communication, it should be easy. That's the whole point. Whereas at the moment, you know, you get so many emails and so what, and it's kind of hard to read these. You know, you have to know the latitude and the longitude, whereas a picture speaks 1,000 words. So we wanted as a EUMETNET layer, but that also, it's why I'm encouraging all EUMETNET analysis from the individual national Met services to put the names on their own analysis for the public and on their own website. So then that's something that's easily done, and I'll be sort of talking about that tomorrow. As you can see, we are doing it to some extent now. But so Meteo Swiss, you know, if you put all the names on your chief forecaster there, whoever does the analysis, this will be a quick reference anyway on your own website. So I think that's answered that.
Okay, thank you, Evelyn. I have been unmuted, so I can answer. So that was
Marco,
really a
yes.
practical. It was really a practical question when doing the daily business, when drawing charts on how to get quick access to. Once a storm has been named. Yeah, I think that's really a critical point. It has to be kind of been made as easy as possible for all the countries and all the centers to know when one of these groups has named the storms, because it's usually going very quick. Centers are drawing maps and issuing blogs and tweets, and from the very beginning on, it should be very clear what storm has been given what name. Okay, that was the point from my question.
Yeah,
try to make that as easy and as clear as possible in the working group, please.
Yeah, no, thank you. I agree with you 1000%. So I was telling you to look at the map, but you're the person who draws the map. So I agree with you, because here in Met Éireann, I had to actually ring the forecaster to put in the name because they hadn't seen the email. So 100%, I agree with you, and I'll be taking that with me. So, you know, certainly, as you know, the duty forecaster doesn't have time. Isn't going. You don't be looking at your emails when you're in.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
No, I agree with you 100%. So thanks for that. So, I mean, I think ideally, Marco, I suppose if it went in immediately into the meteor alarm, wouldn't it, as a layer?
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
Just agree for one platform where we can go very easily and have a look at what names are out there currently.
Yeah, and to get it, as you say, easy, quickly, immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Without
having to phone, without having to email, just go and look with one click if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. And that is a huge references. Okay.
Next question is, what about Medicaid names?
Well, it's the same. It's the same. You know, Apollo, if you like, the Central Mediterranean group and the Southeast group, they are. We're not going to have a separate list for Medicaid. So it's going to be from the same list named by the Central Mediterranean group. Okay. For the moment, anyway. I mean, because you can see from BLOS, which is a very innocuous-looking feature. Well, certainly to my untrained eye, for the Mediterranean, innocuous-looking feature on the surface weather map, but gave all those devastating amounts of rain. So, you know, it doesn't. A Medicaid has strong winds, but as we know, you don't just need strong winds. So the answer there, I think, is that we're not going to, but you know, we'll see. The names used in the Berliner Feather since 1954 for lows and highs, which influenced the weather in Middle Europe, were first in Europe and for a long time the only one, which would be, yeah, that's, I said that, yeah. The names since 1999, oh yeah, thank you. Oh, thank you so much, yeah. The name since, okay, that's fantastic to know. Yeah, no, we're really thrilled that I just go back to the Berlin names there. I just want to say, what about the Meteor Alarm platform for the purpose of sharing? Yeah, well, that's what I was just saying there. Yeah, Madja. Okay, that's what. It needs to go in CAP form as well. Look, it's not a major thing. It's just how to get it in. So Polo. I'll go back to Berlin in just a minute. Polo. Sorry, it keeps jumping back. Paulo, good day. Sorry. Oh, thanks and goodbye. Okay, we get the hint. Yeah, no, look, it's really thrilling that the Institute for Meteorology and FU in Berlin are using the EUMETNET names, have now added them onto their chart. And in fact, I don't have the example here, but suppose Rudolph, see Mr. Rudolph here, Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer. Suppose, you see, Rudolph could be on that chart. Berlin will name that 3 or 4 days ahead, and maybe the National Met Service think, well, there's a possibility of severe weather from it, but you know, we don't tend to issue our warnings until about 3 days ahead or 2 days ahead. But sorry, I beg your pardon. Rudolf could have been out here to the west and then moved in. So Berlin would have named Rudolf maybe 5 days ahead or 4 days ahead, which is excellent. But if that moved in, then maybe Ireland would be issuing it severe weather and wouldn't necessarily use that name, would use names from our own list. So then Berlin have agreed to obviously keep the name Rudolf because that's their name and, you know, it's part of their system. But they're very, you know, we're thrilled that they're going to put in now international. So if we named it Storm Connor, then they'd put in Rudolf with, and then underneath it International Connor. So that's a good work around that. So we're absolutely delighted because the central group really use the FFU Berlin names, and that's where their lovely analysis there use Balos. It hadn't already been named by them. So I think that's all. So I think that's it. Is it? What do you think?
There is one more question in the chat.
Oh yeah, if the same storm cause fatality is the name of that storm, yes. So that's what we're saying. That's what happens in the hurricanes. The Hurricane Committee meet every year and decide on what names are retired. But there was another question earlier, and once we have named a system, we're not going to use that name again. So the answer is, it doesn't even need to cause fatalities. We're going to dismiss all names. We're going to use them once, if that's okay. Only use once in Europe. That's the EUMET name. Okay? All right? I'm down as Tomislav, actually. That's my new name. I said when we're born, our parents give us a name and we keep that name. But look, that's obviously not true. For today, I'm Tomislav.
I don't see any more questions.
Okay.
There is a comment from Natasha. And yeah, in that case, I will stop the recording and thank you for the presentation.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. And where can we get the recording? Is it